Good afternoon. I hope you are staying warm as there is a cold snap heading across North America. I'm Jesse Montano, going to be joined by Meghan Angley here in just a moment. This is Guerilla Sports Off Ice. What a fitting name for the weather today. It's an Avs game day tonight. They're taking on the Philadelphia Flyers as they wrap up a season-long homestand before heading out to the Northeast in Canada for what is going to be a very chilly road trip. We teased it a couple days ago. Meghan and I are going to start unpacking some of the trade rumors that are flying around out there. And I don't know, maybe we'll even end up starting some trade rumors ourselves. We're going to talk about guys that we find interesting, an interesting fit for this Avs team as we barrel towards the Olympic trade freeze. And then coming right out of that, it will be the trade deadline just days later after players get back from Milan for the Olympics. We're going to unpack all of that today. Want to start by telling you guys about a couple of our great partners, starting with our friends over at Furniture Row. Hey, John, can you give me the wide shot for this real quick? Let's go to the wide. Look at this beautiful set. Look at this beautiful set. And we want to thank our friends at Furniture Row for helping make this set possible. If you want your living room to not only look this good, but Meghan, these are without question the most comfortable chairs we've had so far on the set here. We've had a few different looks. If you want it to look like this, head on over to Furniture Row, family-owned company that offers high-quality home furniture at an incredible value. And today, Furniture Row has grown to include over 100 locations across the United States in order to make shopping at Furniture Row something that works for everyone in every state. They have designed their business around three core values: terrific selection, unbeatable value, and a knowledgeable staff. And I can tell you firsthand, that is absolutely the case. It's real furniture. It's real value. Furniture Row, head on over or visit them at FurnitureRow.com. Also want to tell you guys about our great friends over at RefiJet. If you guys don't know by now, you can refinance your auto loan, and RefiJet can help you save around $150 every single month, all which is a soft credit pull and zero hassle. It's lower payments, it's flexible terms, might even be able to get some cash back in your pocket from your car's equity. You guys hear me talk about it on every show. If you want to support us and the work that we do here, head on over, visit refijet.com/sports, fill out a form, see if they can't help you save some money on your auto loan. It is an amazing experience. The way they treat their customers is fantastic and up to board on everything that you would need in terms of, privacy reasons, compliance reasons, all of that. Head on over, refijet.com/sports. It is the faster, easier way to refinance. Hey, everybody, welcome in. Jesse Montano, Meghan Angley. This is Guerilla Sports Off Ice on a very icy, chilly day in the Denver metro area.
20 degrees.
Don't listen to her. She's making stuff up to make me sound bad. My Alexa said it was feels like -2 this morning.
No, well, that might have been really early.
It was early enough. It was early enough for me to keep that energy up all day. She's just out to make fun of me any chance she gets. How you doing? Nice and warm, probably?
I'm doing great. I'm wearing my thermal leggings, and I feel awesome.
Making fun of me wearing thermal leggings. Isn't that interesting? I left my thermal leggings at home today. So
maybe you'd be a little warmer.
Nana boo. I probably would be warmer. Fuck, it is only 20, huh? Well, it's going to be cold tonight. It's going to be cold tonight.
Yeah.
What does this say? Feels like 6. All right. 15 feels like 6.
Tweenies.
Ah! Oh, boy. Well, Meghan, we've been teasing it all week. The trade market is hot. It's active. It's going. I think the Avs made what I'm kind of referring to as a precursor move by moving out Ilya Solovyov earlier this week. In a move that at face value didn't make a ton of sense. You traded one of your healthy defensemen for what's likely going to be an AHL forward, maybe a call up here and there. You kind of sat there and scratched your head. But as you and I were talking about at morning skate today, there were reports last night. The Avs have been linked to a guy like Mario Ferraro. The Avs have been linked to Nazem Kadri, potentially in on Blake Coleman. And we've even seen their name floated out there when talking about Artemi Panarin from the New York Rangers. All of these, I think, are more than anything else, Megan, examples of what you and I have talked about so much on this show. Chris McFarland's going to be involved. If there's a player that he thinks could make the Colorado Avalanche better, at least what he's going to do is call, check the price, kick some tires, and just see what the situation is. So I'm not surprised to hear the Avs linked to so much. Just for any folks that maybe didn't catch the last show, I just love for you to just briefly your thoughts, your impressions on when you saw the Solovyov trade kind of come down, and maybe what gears in your head started turning when you saw the details of it all.
Yeah, I got the sense that they weren't fully in love with what they saw, and it just sets the standard for what to expect then of what they're going to be targeting in a left-handed defenseman, because I thought Solovyov did fine in his role. And specifically in this last stretch, he played some of his best hockey, gets his first NHL game. And the game before it, right, takes a bad penalty. And there'd been a couple instances like that, at least one other that I can recall. And I wonder if it was just enough to say, it's time to move on from a player that we're not fully in love with to start in pursuit then of one that we really feel is a great fit. And so I think it was also just a way to gain a net positive on a waiver claim. Totally. By turning it into now an AHL roster player that has this upside. If they needed a player of his, Pustinen's toolkit, small, undersized, speedy, highly productive, high motor. So all that to say, it made a lot of sense as a move that's going to lead to another, because there is now a spot on the left side, and it's one we've been talking about since training camp. It was supposed to be Solovyov, as a possible solution there. So this just says to me, they didn't quite find their solution yet, and they're getting clear on that and making moves then in the direction of what would be their left-handed defenseman that they want to go to the playoffs with.
Yeah, I mean, he went, almost 2 full months without playing. Then he gets in the lineup, and like you said, I think they just kind of got to the point of like, we think Jack Ashawn or a Keaton Middleton can give us exactly what Solovyov is doing. And I love the call out of, you got something from a waiver claim. A player cost you nothing, and you just got an asset from him. You got to pick out of it,
pick as well.
Whatever. So yeah, I'm with you. I think they looked at it and said, we think we can do this internally. So let's clear a little bit of cap space and send a player out without adding one back in, which is why, like I said, I'm basically just looking at that as a precursor move, that this is a move before a series of other moves.
Well, especially seeing Taves is out, but the news around him is very optimistic. He should be returning soon, potentially even on this upcoming road trip to Canada. But even to do it while Taves is still out speaks to a confidence in the guys that can step up and fill in the meantime. And that also points to it being temporary. So with Taves coming back, being a part of the equation, I think that it reinforces the notion that there's something else to come.
Should also clarify, upcoming 4-game road trip for the Avs. Jared Bednar did tell us today they're trying to decide whether Devon Taves is going to go with them from the outset or if he'll meet them at some point on the trip. So just furthering, Megan, your point about seems like Devon Taves' return is maybe on the horizon. And you do also have to wonder, just given the way it all played out, if Taves had come back, if maybe Solovyov would have hit the waiver wire, been reassigned to Loveland, if they would have just started, trying to cycle more of these guys in and out, which again, just continues to underscore your point of you got something for him. That's a win. Okay. I want to be clear on these lists that you and I are about to run through. These lists are compiled of players that we find intriguing for the Avalanche. There's some of these guys who have been linked publicly to the Avs having some interest. There's some of these guys that probably haven't even heard their names in the rumor mill at all, let alone being linked to any particular team. But I think, and let me know if you disagree with this, I think we both kind of looked at this trade board and a combination or this potential trade board, a combination of the way that the NHL is shaken out this year, so much parity, especially in the Eastern Conference. It's hard to, kind of sift through who's a buyer, who's a seller, who's standing pat. But then also just, kind of the craziness that has become contracts for the last couple of years and trying to sift through, okay, well, what's a number that is now reasonable in the new landscape for a player that maybe fits into the 3C position. And then, on top of that, just how does it all work? How does it all work for the Avs? What are these other teams interested in doing? And then, of course, the last element to all of this that I think makes this an interesting trade board for this year is the new rules that come into place as it pertains to salary retention, not being able to get, multiple teams involved. Once a player has salary retained, there's a waiting period before he can have his salary retained again. So definitely, I think just some factors here that are making this year's trade deadline look a little bit different, maybe in years past, and maybe muddying the waters a little bit more than we've known. The Buffalo Sabres are sellers. The Detroit Red Wings are sellers. Chicago Blackhawks are sellers. We've known that in years past. Suddenly the Buffalo Sabres are right in the mix. Suddenly the Chicago Blackhawks are just a handful of points out. Detroit Red Wings are at the top of the East. Murky waters this year that we're wading into in the trade market, Megan.
Yeah.
So with that, how do we want to do this? Do we want to start one at a time? Do we want to go forwards then D? Or do you want to start with maybe a broader conversation?
If we're going to start with forwards, then I would like to start with the broader conversation around the 3C position.
Let's do it. And I'll give you the floor to kick off this part of the conversation.
Okay, perfect. So I've been thinking a lot about Jack Drury. And right now, that's been the solution the Avs have for the 3C spot. And Jared Bednar has even said that that'd be maybe the one wish on his wish list for them to add around come the deadline. And I wanted to paint a picture of what the standard is around the league for this position. And so I looked at all the 3Cs in the league to get an idea of specifically what their production has been, because we've had no issue with Jack Drury's play in his own end. Defensively, he's been so reliable on that side of the puck. And it's the offensive side that has left, I think, the Avs wanting.
Yep.
And so in looking around the league, the average 3C has put up 16.6 points. And Jack Drury sits at 15.
Put it up.
Yes, this would be great. So average 16.6 points, and the average money they make is 2.6 mil per year. So not only is Jack Drury's production in line with the league average for what a 3C is producing, he's doing it more affordably than a lot of the others. And I'm not making a case for Jack Drury as the 3C. What I wanted to start in painting this picture was, one, this is a regular season conversation. So the expectation for what the Avs want in a 3C in the playoffs is so different from what other teams around the league have decided is acceptable for the 3C in the regular season.
Well, and let me just interject right here, just kind of to this point. There was, and I don't want to, I'll save his name because you might be getting to it here. There was a 3C or a potential 3C that you and I looked at together earlier in the week, and you and I both audibly went, oh, when we saw the production. And again, just underlining the point of, like you said, Jack Drury's production isn't terribly far off from some guys that people would say, go out and get this guy.
Right. And so that's what I wanted to draw attention to, is a lot of this list is other 3Cs, but I've added other players that play a higher role on their teams. And even the production comparatively for some of those guys is intriguing. Just like Boone Jenner was the one we were talking about right now, playing as a wing with Columbus and 25 points on the year. Charlie Coyle with 30 points, 10 goals, 20 assists. It's funny. He would be so perfect as the Avs 3C. He is kind of right in the production that they'd want, but the price point at 5.25 would probably have meant difficult conversations around their ability to extend Brock Nelson. So that's why I've included the AEV column here, to keep in mind the cost of what you pay a 3C to. So that's the Boone Jenner, Charlie Coyle of it all.
Yeah.
I'll start here. Like the green are the guys that I think are of intrigue, not for the Avs to target, but just to shape this conversation a little bit more fully.
Sure.
Anton Lundell is so great to talk about because he was Florida Panthers 3C last year. With Barkov injured, he's stepped into this role as their 1C. It's very important to note then that as a young player at just 24 years old, that was part of his trajectory to take that step forward too. But to have a guy that was utilized as a 3C also have that high-end top 6 skill kind of emphasizes why the Avs want to get better at 3C. It's a luxury to have a player like Anton Lundell, but that's also a big reason that third line was so competitive for the Panthers and a big reason they won the Cup. So I just kind of added for color around Evan Rodriguez. That's their current 3C. And honestly, when the team gets healthy, I'm not sure how this shifts for them, right? Like, is it Barkov, Bennett, Lundell? Does Rodriguez go back to wing? Because Rodriguez has been a 3C before for the Avs. Like, that's a pretty familiar spot. But they have really great forward depth. And you look at the production, though, right? We said Jack Drury was sitting at 15 points, 21 points for Evan Rodriguez. Certainly a little bit of an uptick. But I just find it all very interesting because they're paying Evan Rodriguez a little bit more, but I'm not sure that they have the means to keep this player. Anyways, so I wanted to frame it by a lot of what the Avs are looking for is probably a 2C on other lineups, is where I'm going with this. So I'll go to my other green here, which was Tomas Hertl, who's kind of an outlier in this list with 44 points playing as a 3C for Vegas this year. I think that's the kind of production people have in mind when they're thinking of where Jack Drury maybe has fallen short, and it's anomalous. If you look at the production across the league, it's hard to get 30.3Cs. And that's at this point in the season, just to be clear. And so obviously I highlighted Jack Drury here too, because not included in this conversation is the two-way play. And so Jack Drury, just you look at like the expected goals when he's on the ice, the Corsi 4 possession 5v5, everything that he's doing on the PK and in the face-off dot has added so much value to him that I just didn't want to gloss over that Jack Drury is not only solidly a 3C on so many other teams in the league, you don't want to punt on the value then that this player has in the Avs lineup. Really, this is just how do the Avs get competitive to win a cup? And you go back to the Florida Panthers blueprint. And that's why we're talking about players that are probably 2Cs on other teams. And that's where it gets tricky because the cost certainly goes up from there. So, and just kind of drawing emphasis to this, you look at who the other 3Cs are, just like Yanni Gourde, JT Compher off the top, 18 points, 17 points. They've got a lot more term left in their contracts and a lot more money that they're being paid to do it. It's why you just don't want to so easily move on from Jack Drury in favor of just some other guy that's doing this, that has maybe a little bit more experience or reputation around his name, because Jack Drury is actually doing a really great job. So it has to be an upgrade on Jack Drury is the other part in all of this. For sure.
And I think what you said a minute ago, and this is something you and I have discussed of like, I think the Avs are targeting a low-end 2C. You know what I mean? Like to play on that third line, because that's the clear upgrade, over Jack Drury. And you want, I think the other motivation for this too, that I don't think can be overlooked is as much as you maybe, if you're the Avs, want an upgrade on Jack Drury, I also think they see a tremendous amount of value in Jack Drury playing with Parker Kelly, Logan O'Connor. And then when you think back to that 2022 team, again, what we're describing here is kind of what they did, where they had too much, and that was by design. It was so that they had overflow. It was so they could go, a couple players deep into the press box. And so I'm with you. I think there's a line they're trying to thread here, a needle they're trying to thread here of finding a player whose contract can make some sense. You can find a way to make a contract make sense, but is a clear upgrade on a guy that you have. You pointed this out, I think last week, a younger player than I think he is recognized for in Jack Drury. Like he hasn't been in the league very long. So you're trying to get an upgrade on that for over a guy who can, I don't know, maybe be a really solid third line center at one point. I just think the Avs are at a point with knowing the way that team was put together a few years ago, the Florida Panthers from last year, like you need. I'm trying to find the right way to say this so it's not putting Jack Drury down. You need a more solidified guy who has maybe more experience playing further up in the lineup, and you're going to ask him to play down on his normal role as opposed to Jack Drury. You know, your few years in the league, you've been this thing. We're asking you to take a step. If that makes sense. If the word salad I just said there made any sense.
No, it does make sense. And so I wanted to park time to say it's not a question of is Jack Drury a 3C? He is. It's a matter of is he a 3C on the Colorado Avalanche
right.
in pursuit of a Stanley Cup
Right.
this spring and summer? And that's the difficult question to answer, right? Kind of like how we've talked about Bardakov. I think he's a full-time NHLer.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to be that with such a competitive lineup they have really big aspirations. So Jack Drury is a 3C in my eyes. It's just the matter of they will be so much deeper if they can bolster that third line and have a 3C playing as their 4C.
And I think you want also, and I can't remember how you phrased it a minute ago, but I thought you said like, I think Jack Drury is doing well on that line, but I think if you're the Avs in pursuit of a Stanley Cup, you want someone who's like a driving force threat as well, so that you can say lines 1 through 3. Again, Jared Bednar likes to keep guys in pairs, right? Who's our anchor on this third line that we know is going to get guys going, is going to generate offense, is going to, all these things. And I just, again, Jack Drury is 25,
turning 26 early February.
And this is only 4th year in the league. I think it's understandable that he's not there yet.
And I think the thing I want to hold some space for too is in seeing Anton Lundell's game grow, a young player as well, Mason McTavish. He was almost in this prison at 3C with the Ducks forever. And finally, a little bit banged up right this second, didn't get to see him play the other night. He's playing as their 1C.
Mm-hmm.
And so Leo Carlson, it just takes a little bit of time for some of the younger players. And that's how I view Jack Drury through a different lens. I think there's more upside too. So you just don't want to punt on a player like that, but you still want to upgrade in the meantime and still create that runway of opportunity for him to grow. So he's due for an extension. This is a player that I think you just don't want to, I don't know. I feel like we haven't thrown enough respect around his role, his value, and the upside that exists there.
It's not an indictment on him
No.
saying that the Avs need an upgrade. Again, go back to the conversation we had this summer. We said that going back to the summer before he even, started playing. Come trade deadline, that's probably going to be the position and the line that you want to upgrade. And again, I just think back, this isn't uncommon when you try a young player in a larger role. And even if they do well, if you're truly in, and again, the Avs are lucky. They've gone 4 rounds and won recently. This core, this regime knows what it takes, knows how deep you have to be. And again, I think it was, can Jack Drury really take that next step in a big way? And I think he's taking the next step, but I don't think he came running out of the blocks,
No, and that's why we're having this conversation. Right. So I think we could, transition then.
Mid-step. Mid-step.
And it's just, you don't want to punt on a guy like that too soon. And you don't want to, I said CMAC, his greed sickens me. Sometimes I'm looking around the fan base hold on though, you don't know what you have in Jack Drury. That is a 3C on other teams right now. Set and forget, not even a question. So don't be so quick to ship him out. Not that people are suggesting that specifically. So in looking though at the 3C, I have guys that I like for it.
Centers specifically, because we're going to get into the wing conversation, which I think is fascinating, because if they don't see what they like, I think there are some intriguing wingers out there, but let's start with centers. Who do you got?
I liked Noah Cates last deadline, and I like him this deadline. Here's the problem. Philly extended him. They also love him. Yeah. There is no reason to believe that they would be interested in moving him. So he's just begun year one of a 4-year contract and only 26 years old, former college captain. I know the Avs love that prototype. And he has 25 points in 49 games. So I think his points-based production has upside that you can get excited around.
Mm-hmm.
But what I've loved about his game going back to last deadline is his two-way play. I still think of him as a young player in this league, but he's very responsible. So I think that's the other important thing is you don't want to sacrifice that aspect of Jack Drury's game in favor of production either. It's been very important for the efficacy of that line to include too, just like the willingness to be engaged on the forecheck. So I have no concern with that with respect to a player like Noah Cates. Again, the trouble is, would Philly have any interest in moving him? The type of return that would be required to pull something like that off would probably come at the expense of a Ross Colton.
Mm-hmm. Who else you got for centers?
Okay, so again, another team I'm not sure would have any interest in moving him is Ryan McLeod on the Buffalo Sabres, another 26-year-old in year one of 4.
So this is, and I mentioned it off the top, like this is one of those things where like the Buffalo Sabres are competitive. Like they've been just kind of like, who can you pillage off that roster for the last few years? But like they're another one that like I feel like normally would be around. And isn't. Let me throw a more veteran guy at you here. Vinny Trocheck.
So he is in my yellow, which in my chart was, I do like this guy for it.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel bad because the Team USA conversations, I was sort of putting him under some heat to deflect from some of the heat that Brock Nelson was getting. But if Vinny Trocheck was the Avs 3C, you'd find me first in line to that fan club. Like,
right.
32 points in 37 games, 32 years old. So he's got the maturity, the experience of a veteran. He's being utilized in a top 6 role on a struggling New York Rangers team. And I think that the way he plays, the experience that he has would make so much sense in a third line role, especially if he had the right mindset around what that meant, because it also meant, chasing a cup with that team. So he seems like the type of player, just attitudinally, who could be fine with that.
5.6 AAV. He's got 3 years left after this one. So again, that's a player on a team that has publicly said, hey, we're making some changes that you could bring in and you wouldn't, it's not a rental, right? Like you're going to get a little bit of term out of that. And that's a number that was just worth where the Avs sit right now, cap space wise. It's not, horribly unrealistic to see how they could get there to make that number fit.
The only thing that feels tough about that pill to swallow is like, that's Charlie Coyle money. And so that's where I'm like, are they willing to go above 5? Because that's, where Charlie Coyle sits at 5.25. So is that kind of their internal cap on what they're willing to spend on a 3C? And does the veteran sauciness of it maybe give them some wiggle room versus taking a chance on a younger player? That's a possibility. I just wonder if that's one possible barrier.
And then again, this is just another question of like, how did that calculus change knowing, what the cap is going to be next year? Are you now more willing to spend money on that position? And this is more like a philosophical thing for like the league, but like, is the price of a 3C going to just steadily increase? But by the time we get to the end of that Trocheck deal, are 3Cs going to be making 7? And again, I don't know, but I'm just saying like that's kind of with the way the salary cap is going with some of these contracts we're seeing signed, like, I don't know, maybe by the end of that, it is a decent value deal. But Vinny Trocheck is a guy, like you said, was in the Team USA conversation that I do find intriguing, that could be available out on the market.
Here are my other intrigues. Pavel Zacha from Boston, struggling Boston team. So I think that there's opportunity there, and they've done business with Boston as it is. I think that they would want center depth though, because that is not a super flush part of their lineup. So again, it feels like, do you get talked into Ross Colton as being center depth as part of the return? I'm not trying to ship him out, at the drop of a hat, but he's the most valuable asset that they might have to yield that kind of a return. And you can't, and again, I want to be, I think Megan and I are both on the same page. Like it's a shame because I think Ross Colton, like I do, like we're talking about all these guys and I'm sitting there, I'm like, man, it feels like this should be Ross Colton, but it's just never quite worked out that way. And it's why when we get to the wings,
I sit there and say, okay, if they can't find the center they like, do they go after a wing and try to say, all right, Ross, we're just going to bolster up this line that you're with, and we're going to put you in the middle on the 3C. Let me throw another one at you that I don't love, but I could see why the Avs would like this type of player. His play has definitely fallen off a bit. Andre Palat with the Devils. He's got 1 year left after this one. New Jersey would definitely need to eat a little bit of that money to feel comfortable about it, given where his production has dipped to for this year. But again, I just think that stylistically, like that feels like a Jared Bednar guy, at least like, his career arc feels like he's such a Jared Bednar guy, but it's definitely, the play is definitely taking a step back.
It's a no for me.
It's a no for you? That's
it's a
fine.
No for me.
And I had Kotkaniemi on my list as well as like I don't know, maybe that's a guy who could benefit from a change of scenery, whatever. I dug into it a little bit and I physically had him crossed out on my list that I sent to you.
Yeah.
I was just like, yeah, no. No on Jesperi.
Just in seeing the way his team and the rest of the league seems to talk about him, react to him, respond to him, I fully understand that. Okay, I think I have one more guy. There's actually two.
I'll say I've got two more centers,
Okay, good. So Shane Wright.
Okay, so I don't have him. I saw his name come up in the chat. I didn't even consider him.
I've heard that, there's this merciful conversation happening with Seattle of things have not gone to plan here with this 22-year-old player. But even just going back to how he got into the league, it was just tough, the utilization. I don't think Seattle was super clear on how they wanted to develop him. And so his production has not been where it needs to be for a 3C. It's Jack Drury type production. So this is where, as I'm saying, it has to be a player that is above Jack Drury. I think his upside, especially at just 22 years old, is very interesting.
For sure.
So he's on year 2 of 3 of his ELC. That's where it's interesting too, is like he would be due for a bigger conversation. And if there were some indication that those could be, if he'd be willing to prove himself on maybe a shorter term like deal with the Avs, right?
Yeah.
Then there's a potential future, but it's not super high risk. And maybe that's something that excites him, especially the competitive aspect of Colorado, clean slate, all that to say, production's not where it needs to be, but I still believe in this player going back to his draft year for a reason.
And it also gives you a kind of like a 3-year track of like, okay, if you can get to where we want you to be by 25, 26, you become the 2C when Brock Nelson is done in 4 years.
It's realistic to dream on, because I think, there was a period where maybe Ross Colton was sold a similar dream, but things got weird with Casey Middlestat. And so I worry that just impacted Ross Colton's vigor for playing in Colorado. And I think he found himself more effective on the wing too. So now there's, I won't say reluctance, but just, I don't think you get the best out of him at center anymore. I don't doubt that you could get more out of him at center on a different team if the path to playing in a top 6 role was clearer. But with Brock Nelson extended, it just isn't in Colorado anymore. So that's where the merciful conversation around Ross Colton comes into play too. So Shane Wright was the other one.
And maybe, I don't know, could you get a Ross?
Right. It's like
Shane Wright
he's a little older. I wonder if Seattle just, like when I think back to when they were at their best, they were a lot deeper. There was a little bit more experience represented throughout the lineup. At this point, Ross Colton does have a lot of experience, but there's still plenty of upside too. He's right in that great range of still being a young player, but having been around a while, he's got a little more polish. I think he could fit in Seattle.
Right.
If he had any desire to go there. I
agree. And that is the other thing too, with like, when you have the conversation about Vinny Trocheck, for example, if you're including, and again, I want to be clear, I would love to see Ross Colton stick around. But like, if you're including a guy like that, Ross Colton does have a 12-team no trade list. I imagine New York, which puts him a 20-minute train ride from his home. I imagine that would be one that he'd be willing to go on. I'm going to breeze by one of my two because the way that the team is playing, I don't necessarily know if they're sellers. It's Ryan O'Reilly. We've had him on the list for a couple of years in a row. The foot speed is, of course, the worry with it. Such a smart player, so responsible defensively, great in the faceoff dot, can kill penalties. I think there's so many reasons why a guy like Ross Colton, a guy like Ryan O'Reilly would make sense. 4.5 AAV, 1 year beyond this one, but you worry about the foot speed, and I just don't know if Nashville is in a selling mood anymore.
Yeah, honestly, I've been really low on him because of the concern around the speed, but seeing just how effective he is because he is so competitive, he is such a warrior, and obviously this recent Nashville game was such an example of that, and just the added layer of having a leader.
Yep.
How that adds to a player's game in a unique way, that some of these young players, no matter how good they are offensively or how fast they are, they just can't replicate that.
Totally.
And so I see the value of it. He's not on my list, I think, because I'm still worried about the foot speed.
Yep.
But if this trade came in right now, I wouldn't necessarily be surprised and I wouldn't hate it.
And there's also, and look, like, maybe this sounds silly.
Like Jared Bednar said, I don't know if they're going to trade that guy.
Yeah, right.
Did you just see what we just saw?
Yeah, if they keep playing like this, yeah. So that's the big part of it too. He's a warrior. He's a battler. He's got a little bit of that like Leon Draisaitl where he can be wildly effective standing still. And then again, this is maybe silly and maybe people would laugh at this. He's good friends with Nate. Like, him and Nathan McKinnon get along, and I think that's never a bad thing to have, is guys that are friends with Nate already.
Guys that are friends with Nate. All right, my last guy, because this doesn't need to be long. Mikhail Backlund, out of Calgary. 36 years old, final year of his contract, 4.5. So it's right under that and made up $5 million internal cap. 31 points in 50 games. I just think the points production pace will be more in alignment with what they're hoping to get out of their centerman. So it's, I obviously said my favorite guys at the top, but I like this one as well.
All right. And then this is the one player that, again, I'm going to be careful to how I say this. This is the only player I've heard any traction on that the Avs have actually poked around and figured out how could we make this work and get your nostalgia ready. It's Nazem Kadri. Again, he's making $7 million against the cap, 3 years still after this one. And the irony is the 3 years after this one are what Colorado did not want any part of when they were offering Nazem Kadri that extension. They offered him competitive money in what would have made, if my math is correct here, this his final season under that deal. So, it's interesting. Calgary would have to eat money here. And I don't know, maybe if they're entering into a full-fledged rebuild, they're willing to eat $2 million for the next 3 years to get it to that $5 million number. But like I said, I have heard the Avs have poked around a couple guys from Calgary. And Nazem Kadri has been one of them. You'd be bringing him back and asking him to play a lesser role than he played when he was here last. I don't know if the money works. I don't know if you want that player till he's 39, but maybe playing in a lesser role, you're fine with it. But like I said, this is the one player that I have been told the Avs have at least poked around on.
And what I will say about Calgary is, one, I also love Morgan Frost. This is a player, though, that's young. They've traded for and have extended. So I'm not sure that they're particularly interested in moving him. But here's the issue with Calgary. They are paying their centers way too much money right now. Kadri, $7 million. Backlund, 4.5. Frost, 4.3. Sharangovich, 5.75. They might be looking at their roster construction and wondering if they need to get a more affordable option down the middle, part ways with one of these expensive guys. So honestly, like Kadri, Backlund, Frost, I like all of them. So really, you throw any of them in the mix there, and I think they'd probably like to get a little bit younger too up top, down the middle. So don't know if that's really Ross Colton music at all, to be honest with you, but I do see perhaps opportunity with how much they're spending there. That might be something they need to reevaluate. Yeah,
no, I'm with you. And again, like I said, that's why I don't know if it makes sense for them to be eating money. But again, like if they are going to commit to a rebuild, which I think they should, then you're not going to be anywhere near the cap for the next 3 years. So maybe they would be willing to eat $2 million to get it to that $5-ish million range. That again is a number that we've kind of made up that says if you're going for a 3C, that's maybe a little bit more than a 3C. That's probably the range that you are going to be in.
Right.
So like I said, he's my last center. And while maybe there's a couple other centers that I would prefer, I wouldn't be upset at a Nazem Kadri reunion with the Avs.
I wouldn't be upset at a centerman from Calgary.
All right, let's move to the wall here. I've only got 3 of these guys on my list. And one of them is all of them are like, I don't really know if you're going to actually do that. But we're going to start with just the low-hanging fruit that's been out there, just because I'm sure people are waiting for it. It's Artemi Panarin. He's going to be the big fish at this deadline. And Elliot Friedman has said the Avs are maybe a team that's around there. Darren Dreger has since reported on a few teams that have made offers, have kicked tires, and he has not listed Colorado. So don't know if this is fully possible, but as you and I talk about, if there's anything we've learned from Chris McFarland, if there's a player that he thinks can make his team better, he's at least going to check in on it. Your thoughts, Artemi Panarin, how he could maybe fit into this lineup?
Yeah, honestly, I haven't really entertained it. I don't see the need for
it's such a luxury swing to take.
And I'm even finding we're looking at the left-handed defenseman and perhaps considering that's going to even be a luxury for them, not because they can't afford to. It's just they might be eyeing somebody who's playing a higher role. Anyways, I won't get lost in the sauce until we get there. Where I'm going with this is this isn't even a current need. They are getting production across the lineup from their top guys. So this need for a high-producing top 6 winger isn't high. And I look at what they've built culturally inside the locker room. And I view this as a team that very intentionally doesn't like distractions and doesn't even want to invite the possibility of off-ice problems. And so my hope is that it would be something they're unwilling to touch just because of the risk involved. So especially weighing the fact that there isn't a pressing need for what he would bring, I just haven't entertained it.
So like I said, I did my digging on it just because I know this Avs front office, they're going to check on it. You know what I mean? Now it could be they check on it. And even if they are intrigued, we have heard this in the past, they have gone to the leadership core and said, what do you guys think about this?
Right.
And there's one example I can think of at least that I know of for sure where the leadership group said, we'd rather not invite that in. Now, I'm assuming you're referring to there's been a couple off ice things that have come up with Panarin over the last couple of years that have thrust his name into the headlines. And yeah, do the Avs want to get involved in that? I don't know, especially for a player, to your point, that look. No one's ever going to turn their nose up at, a 90-point player. But to your point, okay, let's play this hypothetical game. You add Artemi Panarin. You're moving Ross Colton out to make the money work. So, okay. Now you have Panarin in your top 6. Now what? You know what I mean? You're almost kind of getting yourself back into the Mikko conversation that they made, the argument they made against why we felt we had to deal Mikko. I just feel you get yourself a little bit back into the, okay, great. Now you've got Artemi Panarin on your second line. You've now got 3 guys that want to rip one-timers from the dot on the left side on the power play, and McKinnon, Panarin, and Netchis. And you just kind of ate into your depth because you still don't have a center on your third line. You're bumping Gabe Landeskog down. Who's he playing with? Like I said, I just don't. I get it. It's a 90-point player. It doesn't make a ton of sense, I don't think.
No.
I
sorry.
Like I said, if they ended up with him, if he does the Claude Giroux, I'm only going to Colorado, and they eat half the money, and you can get him for nothing. okay, that's a great player that you added, but again, I just like it doesn't plug a hole that they need filled.
No. I hate it.
I'll say Megan's out on Panarin.
Yeah, no.
So
thanks.
let's move on here. Who do you got for someone on the wall?
I actually don't have any wingers.
Oh, really? Okay, cool.
No, not that I won't weigh in on this with your wingers in mind.
No, I was gonna say I'll keep going. So then I'm gonna go to the next guy that I think, again, like he just got a new contract kind of thing, Jake DeBrusk in Vancouver, and I go to Jake DeBrusk because like Vancouver's looking to tear it down, I think, and I think everybody's on the table.
Oh yeah, because he was healthy scratch, right?
5.5 AAV. He's got 5 years left after this one. Like he just signed that new deal with Vancouver.
Hold on. I'm not immediately closing the door on this. I have a good opinion on his character. So let's see how his hockey's.
And like this is a guy that they've been around in the past. Almost 28 goals last year, kind of had his revival with the Canucks. And even in the years that like people talked about him struggling with the Bruins, like he was a 20 to 25 goal guy easy every year. So again, like that's like maybe that's where you have the Ross Colton. And again, I don't know if he would want to go to Vancouver, but like, okay, maybe you get that for your third line, and then you can still go out and try to find a center or whatever. Or maybe you feel better about Jack Drury because you've got a guy like Jake DeBrusk there who can carry a little bit more of that offensive load. But this is another player that just when you look at a team like Vancouver who is looking to tear down,
wow, I
think Jake DeBrusk is maybe a name that the Avs have been linked to in the past, and they could maybe try to get back around this year.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I don't hate it above a half point per game for a couple of his past seasons. I like the steadiness of his production. Obviously, it's a little weird in Vancouver at the moment to include his utilization, but yeah, I'm interested in it.
And then my last winger here is one that I think is like just such a great fit for if you're going to say, let's just go with a wing and not a center. I think it's picture perfect for what the Avs are looking for. It's another Calgary guy. Got a year of term beyond this, Blake Coleman. No? Don't like Blake? Okay. All right. We 1-2 cups with Tampa.
And here's the thing. I could see why the Avs would have interest in him.
Right.
I really can.
Right.
So if that trade came through on my phone right now, I wouldn't be surprised.
And again, I mostly think like he played that kind of role for Tampa on those cup runs. But that's just a guy that, again, I look at the body of work. He's got a year left beyond this one. I could see the Avs being interested in a guy like that.
No, I could too. And I think he could help them. So it's one, if there was a greater need for a winger, you would have more enthusiastic support, but
yeah,
it's another for me.
And again, like all three of those guys that I just named, I think are, if you decide that, okay, the center market either isn't what we want it to be, the player that we want isn't out there, or the prices are just too high, and you decide to pivot to, okay, can we just really bolster on the wall? Those are three guys that I think they would get involved with. But I think they're going to prioritize trying to find a center.
Right.
Like, I think you have a lot of good wings. So those are my three guys that I look at and say, on the wall, if you want to get there, they could maybe get into.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's shift to the back end. And Megan, like, you and I were talking at morning skate, like this was a difficult part of the list because there's just not much out there I'm interested in.
Right.
There's one player I really like. And then you and I were discussing before we got started here, like, I think you'd even have to kind of do some finagling on how that fits into your lineup. Who's a defenseman that you're looking at off the top here for an ad for the Avs?
I mean, I have my wild card, like my dark horse candidate that I could just tee off with, but then it gets normaler, I promise.
Do that so that you can tell everyone who that even is, and then we can go from there.
Okay, it's Ryan Shea from the Pittsburgh Penguins, and he's in, I believe, his 6th year pro, and it's sort of the first year that he's really solidified himself as an everyday NHLer. So I think that's why he's not on many people's radars and why that's a little bit of a risk too. But he's been so reliable in his own end, eating up big minutes on their kill. Just 28 years old, year one of one, former college captain. I think his motor, his size, 6'2", obviously a left-handed shot matters here. I'm already seeing the sentiment around the Pittsburgh Penguins fan base of like, extend this guy, because he's just been such a reliable, steady fit on their back end that I think the Avs want that. And then his skating ability, I think, is diverse enough to keep up with the pace of play as the Avs, especially given that motor. Like, you're not really looking to this guy to be a huge source of production, but I think his consistency in his own end makes him my dark horse candidate, because he's on a $900K contract right now. Like,
Right.
He is due for an extension then. So not sure what the interest would be from Pittsburgh to move on from a player like this. But in looking at what Pittsburgh is, this is a team that's ripe with opportunity to get better, with the possibility of maybe wanting younger players in return, or different draft capital.
Right.
I don't know where the prospect pool appeal would be for Pittsburgh, because they've just conducted business. So I don't know how high it would be. They've just taken a defenseman, so I don't know if it's realistic, but I like him.
And I'm looking, doing a little bit of Ryan Shea research here. So here's the conversation around a defenseman. Are you going for a 7th D? Do you want a guy who's your extra?
Right.
And if you run into a situation like you did in 22 where Sam Girard gets hurt, we've got a guy we feel really comfortable with plugging in. Or do you want a guy that like is gonna be part of your decor going forward, and you're gonna be in this like, hey, we've got too many, we're gonna need to what are you going for here? I think if you're looking for like the 7th D who can be the extra, I think Ryan Shea's a great I think that's a great name to throw out there. I do wonder what it would cost to acquire a player like that. And like, this is me saying, and I'm going to be fully honest here, folks. Megan said Ryan Shea. I said, who? I said, Brady Shea? She's like, no, Ryan Shea from the Penguins. No clue who he was. And I guess that's always my like kind of, and again, this comes from like, I don't watch Pittsburgh Penguin games every night. Like I do sit there and I have the reluctance of like, ugh, are you just getting another young player who's like having a moment here and then is going to settle back into being mediocre? And again, that's willing to admit like my own ignorance on Ryan Shea's game for sure.
Well, that's the thing. I don't know that he's that young, 28 years old. So I think the money immediately makes so much sense too, especially if what you're eyeing is a replacement for like a 7th D guy. Because then the other concern, to your point, is if it's a 7th D guy, the cost really can't be too high. So just in looking at even what third pair defensemen around the league are making, there's a lot of fluctuation. And you have to really love it more than you loved Ilya Solovyov. And so there aren't a lot of third pairing defensemen that I love distinctly more than Ilya Solovyov. Especially like proportionate to the price point. So I think that made this search for the depth D that they go out in pursuit of really interesting. So I kind of took the approach of it has to actually be a little bit of an upgrade. And that then means different conversations consequentially as a result. But if you're going to move on from Solovyov, who was like this cost-effective, just fine fit, you're looking to get much better.
Yeah, I agree. You don't want just fine. Oh, he can hang it. Like, no, you want a guy. And like, look, Jack Johnson wasn't like, well, he could have won the Conn Smythe, but like he came in and was good in that third pairing role on the cup run when Sam Girard went out. Like he came in and was effective. I think I'm with you. I think they want a guy that isn't just going to survive, but can actually go out there and make something happen. He's not a lefty, which makes this hard. My first guy that, again, I had for this role, 7th D, I'm thinking Jack Johnson 2022, Luke Shen.
Yeah. You talking with me about this at Morningscape.
So, again, he's pending UFA, so you're likely talking rental. He is a right shot, so that doesn't help your lefty righty conundrum that you're in. But again, like if you're talking about a guy that we're okay sticking in the press box and, maybe he never even gets into a playoff game because we stay healthy. But if we needed him to, we know he could give us some quality minutes. I thought Luke Shen was an interesting name that's potentially out there.
I have, kind of had him on tertiary lists as a guy to consider. So he's not off my list for consideration. Like, again, that trade came through right now.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't hate that. I would be concerned about the lefty righty
for sure
dilemma.
For sure.
That it's such a funny problem to have.
It is, because it's the opposite of what most people normally do. And then I've got two more on my list, and one of them I'm going to go to. I think both of these guys are probably on your list.
I think they're both.
I'm going to go with this one that I know you and I have both told each other is on our list. He is a lefty, and again, you're probably circling him for that role I just talked about with Shen. It's Carson Soucy from the New York Rangers. Left shot defenseman, pending UFA, just over $3 million in the AAV. Again, I don't think this is a guy you want to get and say, hey, he can come play in the second pair for us. But as a 7th D, I think you'd feel pretty good with Carson Soucy being the guy who's up in the press box for you.
Yeah. So another player with a little bit of size, 6'5", and the money, $325, like obviously more than what Solovyov was. It's funny because the other guy's making the same amount.
Mm-hmm.
That's sort of my internal comfortability. I won't even set it as an internal cap because I'm not sure the Avs would be willing to pay a third pairing defenseman.
An extra.
Yeah.
An extra defenseman.
An extra defenseman. I think they would be, but it would just maybe require a different decision around the decor. So it would probably be someone in, someone out to make it work. And I wouldn't raise an eyebrow then at 325. Anyways, Carson Soucy, 31 years old. I think the experience that he brings, the size, also a good motor, pretty steady. I would like that option.
And then my last one, and this is probably my number one on my whole board, to be honest. He's a guy I was huge on last year. And you had to remind me about it this morning because I was just looking.
I thought you were all over this.
Well, and truthfully, going back to what I said at the beginning of all this, it's where the team is at in the standings that I just kind of didn't really entertain. But he is a pending UFA. Mario Ferraro. This is a guy who this would not be a rental thing. You'd be bringing this guy in to be a part of your core, I think, going forward. But at that point, you definitely start having the question of, well, now you've got 7 guys who are every night guys. Does someone have to move out here? Does everyone just kind of live with that for the cup run, knowing that you're going to be coming in and out, and then you really address it in the summer? But Mario Ferraro is my guy. Played with Kale at UMass, was the captain of that team they went to the national championship with. Really responsible defensively. 6 foot. If you're mean, you can call him undersized, I suppose. But I really like this player a lot, and I think he fits a lot of the molds that the Avs typically like to fit when they're bringing a player in.
Just 27 years old, so I think investing in him as a possibility for their future makes a lot of sense. Bolster up the left side, the experience that he brings, the maturity he carries himself with, high-end speed and burst too that can keep up with their pace of play, and a really heavy shot. Honestly, I wonder if they kind of see where Malinsky's found success in leveraging his shot more this season. I know that sounds so obvious. They might see that they can get even more of this represented in their back end, but while also a steady player in Mario Ferraro. It just makes it really well-rounded, really complete, and it makes a lot of sense just stylistically. The way that he plays, I think, can keep up with them. I think, too, like we were talking about it upstairs, the way Josh Manson's game opened up even more in coming to Colorado. I'd expect that out of Mario Ferraro, too.
Yeah.
But first and foremost, just he's so reliable in his own end. I think that's the appeal. But I think there's just upside there, too, because he is still a relatively young player that he's been linked to the Avs now 2 deadlines back to back. So that's not for nothing. And the other side of this is where San Jose is at, because I've heard them build as both buyers, sellers. They've obviously already been involved in a trade at this point. I've heard that they want to get younger on their back end. So what's interesting is I consider Ferraro to be young for a defenseman. So I'm curious what that kind of return then would look at if they're very specifically, playing true to that. So Avs don't have a ton to entice other than maybe a Gulyev, but I offer you Gulyev for Mario Ferraro. Right. Done.
And like I do. Yeah. I don't know. I have been a Sam Girard defender for many years of I think he's such a better player than people give him credit for. But I do think with the rise of Sam Malinsky, he needs a new contract. But with the rise of Sam Malinsky, if you could add a guy like Ferraro, I feel like you could reasonably go into the summer and say, okay, we now have an extremely valuable trade piece in a guy like Sam Girard that we can go out and really make an impact elsewhere in the roster. But like I said, Mario Ferraro might just be my number one guy that I have on this board here. But to your point, are the Sharks buyers or sellers? Are they both? I don't really know.
He's due for a contract, so maybe there's just something in the Sharks' future planning that they're like, we just can't account for this.
Mm-hmm. And the other thing too, at 27, and this maybe sounds silly, but like they might be looking at it as like, you're just too old for where we think we're going to hit our window, which again, like is something that teams do that other teams get to benefit from and I'm trying to think of who that most recent example was it Arizona that like there was a guy that they traded that was like, oh, he's not going to line up with when they think their core is going to be good. Obviously, this is before they moved. Doesn't matter. But like you see teams do this every now and then where it's like, hey, we thought we were on a rebuild that was on course. It took us a couple more years. So now we have this other great young core coming. And maybe a guy like Mario Ferraro is just like, yeah, you'll be a couple years too old by the time we think this group is really getting where we want them to be.
Because I look at the Wenberg extension out of San Jose recently, just a 3-year contract. I wonder if the conversations with Ferraro have been term, and San Jose loves and respects this player and recognizes they cannot offer it. So maybe it's a merciful way of like, all right, well, we want to get a return on this player.
Who's a good player.
Who's a great player and an important part of their leadership core. That's why I don't take it lightly that his name's been in the mix. I don't think that's a player that San Jose wants to part with easily.
Right.
So all that to say, I think it's probably a term issue more than anything else that's holding Ferraro back in San Jose. And that makes it curious then for where the Avs see his future fit. Because I think at 27, there's still a lot to give.
I agree. That's my list. What do you got?
That was all.
Anything else?
Those were all of my defensemen. I only had 3.
Who's another guy that's not? I'm on a page here and his name just scrolled by that I've always just liked as a defenseman is Nate Schmidt. And there's been times when he's like come available and stuff that I've been like, that would be really fun.
Yes.
I don't know if he would be right now, but I like Nate Schmidt.
Well, and so I kind of look at the role he had in Florida. I see the other cup contending teams like value him for a reason. And it's not so different from like, yeah, Jack Drury might be a 4C on the Avs when they're competing for a cup, but he's a very treasured player. He plays a very important role. That's how I'd feel about Nate Schmidt. He kind of came up in my preliminary search and I just got the same sense of, I don't think that's a guy that they let go of easily.
Unfortunately, yeah.
I mean, even just his command, it was free agency over this summer. I think there's a lot of respect for that layer, kind of like we were talking with Ryan O'Reilly. I think Nate Schmidt has, his version of that as a defenseman.
For sure.
But you're right. I like his fit. Like if that somehow was possible, that would be higher on my list.
Yep. Definitely. All right. I mean, that's all I got.
I think that's all I have too. It is interesting to factor in where some of these teams are at in terms of their willingness to part ways with some of these players. Because, I've seen some names in the chat and they're guys that I'd like to consider. I'm just not sure their teams would have any desire to move on.
Right. No, I'm totally with you. And that's what I think is going to make this into such an interesting trade season is I think there's going to be some teams that are going to have to make decisions. And let me just do this really fast, just because someone framed it like this to me the other day. And I really kind of, like it was just a little bit surprising. So I'm going to use the Avs as the example here. So everything that we just talked about, everything that you need to, figure out, decide if it makes sense, et cetera, et cetera. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You got 10 games between now and the deadline. Like, that's not very much. Because you have basically 3 weeks off in there. So between now and the time you need to have your roster finalized, you got 10 games.
Yeah.
There's going to be a lot of interesting decision-making that teams are... Because, like, think of all those bubble teams. If you've got a pending UFA that you think might walk, you've only got 10 games to figure out if you are keeping them as your own rental to go for it, or if you're going to try to get something for them. And yeah, it's just going to be interesting.
Yeah, that definitely adds a layer to the timeline. I think it is going to be a lot sooner than people expect, which is why we're doing this primer right now.
Right. Because genuinely, like the Olympic trade freeze is 11 days away.
Yeah, 10 games to deadline.
Right.
11 days to trade freeze, and you just know too when like one chip falls, everything just starts happening, and so I don't think the Slovov thing was the biggest thing that put things in motion, but there's motion.
There's motion. The wheels are turning, and then again, like if a guy like Panarin comes off the board, those handful of teams that were in on Panarin who are now all going to their plan B, they're going to get active, which is going to force other teams to get active, and so to your point, one domino starts to fall, and it does have an interesting cascading effect on the rest of the league.
Yeah. I can't wait for Ryan Shea to be an Av.
Hey, I mean, like I said, that's a great off the board pick. And if that comes to fruition, like that's a great foresight on that potentially. So we'll see.
Perfect.
We'll see. That's going to do it, folks. Game night tonight. We're back down at Ball Arena. Last game of the homestand. And then how about 11:30 a.m. on Sunday? Mountain time. She's Megan. I'm Jesse. We've got John back there behind the glass. I see Ashley back there right now.
Ashley.
So just some love to everyone that makes all this stuff happen, right? Like we can't do any of this without all the folks that make it happen for us. So big shout out to our crew behind the scenes. She's Megan. I'm Jesse. Thanks so much, guys. We'll talk to you tonight after the game.
Bye, everyone.
Have a good one. Stay warm out there.